Hello. In this opportunity, it is a pleasure to us to explain how to teach grammar and vocabulary for exams based on Chapter 5 of the book How to Teach for Exams by Sally Burgess and Kairi Head. We are Brittany Crespo, Luisa Alvarez, Maria Jose Mendoza, and Tracy Molinares. Without further ado, let's go.
So this chapter highlights the several key principles for teaching grammar for an exam context. Firstly, it stresses the importance of contextualization because grammar should not be taught in isolation but rather through authentic text and exam style tasks for students to see how grammatical structures function in real communication. Secondly, the book advocates for a focus on accuracy but also on fluency. While accuracy is vital for exams success, fluency should not be neglected. And the activities that encourage the both controlled practice and more communicative use of grammar, they are highly recommended. Thirdly, the chapter emphasizes the need for explicit instruction alongside opportunities for discovery and also for clearly for discovery and inductive learning. The teachers should clearly explain grammatical rules, but also encourage the students to notice patterns and work things out for themselves. And the practical techniques discussed include using exam questions as a starting point of grammar for grammar analysis, incorporating error correction strategies that are both effective and encouraging, and also utilizing a variety of engaging activities like grammar games and interactive exercises.
Okay, so now I will be talking about how to teach vocabulary effectively when preparing students for exams. This part of the chapter emphasizes that vocabulary teaching shouldn't just be about memorizing word lists. Instead, it should help students develop a deep, practical, and long term understanding of the words that they'll actually gonna encounter in exams. So, first, the chapter talks about systematic vocabulary development. This means planning how we introduce, practice, and also revisit vocabulary over time. For example, it's not enough to teach a group of words only once. We need to recycle them in different activities like writing, reading, and listening, for example, and also speaking. This ensures long term retention and helps students to use the words in different contexts. Okay, then there's the importance of context. Rather than teaching isolated words, we should present vocabulary within meaningful sentences, authentic tests, or we can even use real exams exercises. This helps students to understand not just the meaning of a word, but also how it's used in real life communication. For example, teaching a word like issue that we have here in the presentation, it's much more effective when students see it that work in a newspaper, an article, or even an academic essay than just on a flashcard. Then another important point is word analysis. This includes teaching students how to recognize prefixes, suffixes, and root words. It is a powerful, really powerful tool, strategy because it gives students tools to guess the meaning of unfamiliar words during exams. If a student, for example, knows that pre means before, they can figure out that preview means to view something beforehand. This kind of analysis builds learner autonomy and confidence. Next, this chapter recommends memory strategies. This includes techniques like active recall, where students try to remember words without looking at them, and spaced repetition, which means reviewing vocabulary at strategic intervals. Visual tools like mind maps are also very helpful, as well as practicing collocation that are basically natural word combinations like make a decision or take a risk. Technology is a big support here too, with apps like Quizlet, Memrise, or Wordwall are great for reinforcing vocabulary and autonomy in students. Finally, one of the most important points in teaching exam is teaching exams a specific vocabulary. That means preparing students for the language register they'll actually gonna need depending on the exam. For example, if it's an academic test like IELTS, they'll need to master academic words, formal connections, and phrases useful for writing essays or giving structured oral responses. For other exams, like for example Cambridge exam, we might also need to focus on idiomatic expressions or phrasal verbs. To address this, teachers can use high frequency exam words and model tests, reformulation activities, and interactive games and focus on the specific target vocabulary. So, overall, teaching vocabulary for exams isn't just about increasing the number of words students know, it's about helping them to use those words appropriately, strategically, and confidently in exam context.
Finally, Chapter 5 highlights the importance of integrating grammar and vocabulary rather than teaching them in isolation. It also recommends combining both elements in meaningful, for example, in exam relevant tasks such as writing and speaking activities that require the appropriately use of both. And these integrated approaches enhances students' knowledge and prepare them for real exam conditions, supporting their ability to use the language effectively in significant and authentic communicative situations. Thank you.
Now, in final thoughts, this chapter expresses that in order to teach grammar and vocabulary for exams successfully, professors must teach not only rules and words, but how to use them in context. This requires a comprehensive approach that goes beyond mere rule based instruction and a balance that combines explicit instruction and meaningful practice. As an expected result, students become more confident and better prepared for their exams, setting them up for success in academic and professional pursuits.
So, guys, now we are going to start an activity to perform how can we teach grammar and vocabulary, in this case using some experts that can show up when we are making an exam. So what we are going to do basically is to analyze the exercises. For example, in this we have fill the blank. We have, and in this case, four questions where we are meant to complete every single sentence. So I want to ask you to read every single one and to try to analyze and deduce what is the topic of this exercise. And if you want to give an answer, you just have to raise your hand. Okay, Maria Jose, you can go.
Okay, I think this one, the first one, is moral verbs. Y podría
Exactly.
ser you must or you have to bring your passport
Mhm.
to the airport.
Exactly. Thank you so much. So yes, this activity, this exercise is for moral verbs. Lisa, you also want to add something?
I think the next one is the same. Like people must obey the law. Like something
Yes.
you have to do mandatory.
Yes. Excellent. Thank you. And now, Brittany.
I think the third one is should, like
Mm-hmm.
it's not obligatory, but it's an advice for the person should be.
Yes. Excellent. Thank you so, so much. And I want to ask you, because if you have read the four questions or the four exercises, you will maybe notice that there's one that is different from the others.
But before we discuss about that one, I want to ask you the first three questions uh, for you are evaluating grammar or vocabulary.
I think it's grammar.
Yes,
I think it's grammar.
yes. Thank you so much. Yes, because in this case, in the first three questions, we are looking out to recognize what is the correct structure of the sentence instead of focusing in maybe a single lexical word. Now, the fourth question is different because we already have a structure, but we are looking out for a different word. In that case, the fourth question, would you say that is focused on grammar or on vocabulary?
I think it's vocabulary.
Yes, excellent. Because in this case, I think we can actually deduce the kind of vocabulary we are evaluating in this last question. I will say that it evaluates the vocabulary for clothes. Do you think that affirmation is true or false?
Yeah, I
It's
think it's
true.
true.
I
Yes,
think it's true.
yes, thank you. In this case, it's for clothes, and we can see that despite this, let's say the structure of the question is the same, we can recognize the difference between a grammatical question and a vocabulary question. Now let's continue with this next activity that is special for a vocabulary evaluation. So in the next activity, there. Exactly. Thank you so much. Now I will go ahead and say specifically that this kind of activity is very special and is very useful for vocabulary evaluation. I want to ask you, when you regard at these four exercises, what is the kind of vocabulary you think it specializes in? We're talking about clothes, we're talking about the weather, we're talking about school.
I think it's food. Like
Yes,
I think it's good.
the third one looks like broccoli.
yes, exactly. It is food, but it is specifically um vegetables.
Vegetables, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And now I want to ask you, um, well, we have seen two different activities. One is for fill in the blanks, and the other in this case is completing the words. You will say, comparing the two activities, which one would you think is more appropriate for vocabulary and which one is more appropriate for grammar? Not because they are showing this way, but you as future teachers, what are the ones that you will use for your students for grammar and vocabulary, taking into account these two examples?
Well, I will use the
The
previous
previous?
activity. Yeah, the previous activity to teach grammar because we have like an structure, a clear
Okay.
structure for modal verbs, and here we only have like the spaces for the letters. So this is what I will use to teach vocabulary because it's
Okay.
not that complete.
Yeah, you are right. Because in this case, maybe the activity is more useful for a memorization of the word. The other is to place the correct word in the correct space. So one helps more with the grammatic structure, and the other maybe helps more with the word memory, with the lexical memorization. So thank you so much for participating in this small activity to show an example of how we can analyze and learn a little about how we can, well, it's a little redundant, but how can we learn to prepare ourselves for exams and how to prepare our students for exams, to approach each uh, exercise and analyze it before completing it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Miss. Bye
Courtney.
bye.
Bye bye.
Bye, Miss.